Welcome back to the channel, guys. I'm Steve, and tonight I'm making a video about grease. A lot of guys go out and they get their first tractor, maybe their first excavator, and they may not know about greasing, and the dealer might tell them, hey, you got to grease this thing, but I'm gonna try and break down a little bit of this and make a video to help you out. Biggest thing, if you don't grease your machine, you can do a lot of damage. These pins and bushings, they wear out fast, makes it harder for the machine to move, and if you don't grease it and you wear it out prematurely, they're not going to give you any warranty for that. It's just going to be operator error and negligence. So start out with some grease. I really like the Haviland Crimson, the red and tacky. Napa will work. A lot of them have the same NLGI number. If you look on your tube of grease, it should say NLGI number 2. That's going to be good grease. That is what we run in construction equipment. That's what we run in the real machines that run every day, all day long. Most homeowners are not going to put 10-12 hours on their machine in a given day. Sometimes you do, but usually it's a couple hours here, a couple hours there. And so you don't have to grease every day. What you need to do is grease that thing at least every 8 hours of use. Now, I tend to use mine pretty hard. I do put some hours on it. So I generally, every time I go out for an actual project, I just grease the thing. It's quick, it takes a couple of minutes, costs almost nothing, and it gives me a chance to walk around that machine and look at everything. Look at the pins, make sure no pins are walking out, no retainers are gone. What if I told you you don't need to spend $200, $300, $400 on a fancy electric grease gun? One of these guys will do it just fine. This is a Napa grease gun, similar to a Lincoln. You can get them with the handle, you can get them with the pistol grip. I like this pistol grip because it gives me one free hand to be plugging into grease zerks, and the other hand I'm pumping away, and it just works well for me. This particular grease gun, I don't know, they're probably 20-25 bucks. I've had this one for years. I use it all the time. The tip on this guy, this is a lock and lube. There's some other copies out there. These aren't very much money. I really like the lock and lube. It just locks on there. They don't leak grease out. We want the grease in the machine, not on the machine. So it doesn't matter how much you get all over the machine. If it's not driving this grease down into that pin and through those channels of that bushing, you're not greasing it. So these are really cheap. Take a lot of frustration out of the greasing. All right, for cleanup, you can use all sorts of cleaners. You make a mess and you got grease all over the place. At the end of the day, I like to just come in, throw this on the workbench, spray it down. I just got a spray bottle. It's got diesel in it. I'd say that's cheap, but now we're what are we, $6 a gallon, so it probably costs about $1 to fill this thing up and lasts a long time. It sits on the shelf good. It's just a great solvent, gets that off of there. If the smell of diesel bothers you, you might want to find something different, but works really effective for getting the crud off of this. And just save your old rags. They get dirty, use them for grease rags, throw them away, and off to the races. Alright, so next up on the list is going to be just having an assortment of these grease zerks. These little kits are cheap. You can get them at Napa, you can get them at Harbor Freight. Some of them are going to be standard only, some of them are going to be metric only, some of them are a combination. So depending on what equipment you have, you might want one of these. They come with, like this guy here, we've got 90 degree, we got the straight, got the bigger straights, the little guys. So some are going to be metric, some are going to be standard. And you just take a wrench. You don't have to put pipe dope on these or anything. You just thread the old one out, thread the new one in, and you're back to greasing. Now, if you find that your tractor doesn't want to take grease, you pull this out, you put a pick in there, see if you can find some rust or something in there, clean it out, put a new zerk in. Usually they're going to take grease. The other thing is this is a pipe thread tap. You can again get them in standard or metric, but when you got this guy out, find a tap that fits that same hole and thread this in and out a couple times. And if you can't get this thing to thread in, or maybe you hit something and smash this, usually you can chase those threads and get this thing threaded right back in there. So one of the first things I do if I buy a used machine is I'll usually trade these guys out. I'll go around it, I will grease it one time, and if anything doesn't take grease, or maybe you want to put your 45 in there or a 90 in there, so you can come at it from here instead of having to stand on your head and come in from there. Just makes life a little bit easier. So if you buy a used machine, or say you bought a new whatever tractor, maybe they put cheap crummy Chinese grease zerks in it, and maybe they're just really difficult to get them to take grease. These are cheap. Thread them out, thread them in, forget about it, take the frustration out of it. And you can also, depending on what suppliers around you, you can buy these things in bulk. I keep ones that I use real frequently. I just buy them in bulk, and then I keep these kits around, and that way just fix that problem. If you got one that doesn't take grease, don't skip it. Go out, grab your little kit, grab a crescent wrench or a socket, and trade that thing out and get that thing taking grease. So these grease guns are the same thing. This is the tip that you're going to normally see come with one of these guns, and obviously it does not lock on. This is replaceable if you want to run these style. They do have 3 little pieces, usually a spring and a ball inside of there. You just take a wrench and twist this off. This one's loose. Pull that apart. You can see the ball. There's the spring. If we clean this all out, we got to come out of there. Hold the phone. There's your spring. There's a little rubber piece down in there that doesn't want to come out. That one's a little bit tough. Alright, so here we can see what's inside of there. What's going to happen real commonly is you're going to get rolling around and you're going to get a little rock that's going to go right in the end of this thing, and it's going to get stuck in these jaws. There's 3 of them. It'll get stuck right in there. You're not going to be able to put that nozzle onto that grease zerk, or it's just going to leak really bad. So spin this off. You don't have to run that tight. It's not going to fall off. This guy sits on this spring. These guys are going to lay on top of this all the way around that. I'm going to stick those, put a little grease. Actually, this guy here, this has got a 4th one that's up inside of there, if you can see that. Anyways, real simple. Spin this apart, clean the pieces out, get the rock out, put it all back how you found it, and put it back on, and you're back to pumping grease. There, you can see that little ball that lives right down inside of there. He's important too. Make sure you put him back. So we can get a little bit of grease here. These will all stick right on here with a little bit of grease on them. Get this guy out of here. Get those 4 all sitting on there. Just push that down in there. Kind of want to look from this side, make sure they're all lining up. And well, I do not have the right screwdriver out for this. And we'll put this little spring. It goes right down in there. Thread that back together. And rock's gone, and we're back in the game. I have not had that happen on the lock and lube. I don't know why. Not giving it a whole lot of thought, but I don't believe I've had that actually happen since I've put this on. You can see, yeah, it might be it closes up tighter, maybe they don't get in there, but anyways, that's 2 different ones that you're going to generally see. These whips, these are replaceable. You can get these short, you can get them a solid pipe, you can get them really long if you're trying to get up into a tight spot. Maybe you can't get this down into a hole, but you can get a long whip down in there. This is what generally comes with the Napa guy. Yeah, they're going to work. Nothing wrong with it, but this is an upgraded one. You see it's got the springs on it so that this hose doesn't bend and blow out. Just depends if this is once a week you pull this out and put a couple squirts of grease in the tractor. You don't need anything fancy. Probably 25 bucks and a couple tubes of grease, you're probably good for the year. You know, if you've got a couple excavators and a couple of machines, you know, you're going to want to get better stuff. Now, if you've got an excavator, you might start thinking of an electric grease gun, depending on, you know, personally, I don't mind pumping grease, but, you know, if you're older, or you got arthritis or something, you might want to get that DeWalt grease gun or Milwaukee grease gun. They're great tools, especially on larger excavators. You're pumping a lot of grease. You might pump, you know, you might pump 2 to 8 of these into one machine, depending on how sloppy it is, how big the pins and bushings are. That's when you really need to get into something. Now you can buy very similar to this, and it's got a air mechanism on it. You hook an air line up in your shop and you've got an air greaser. You can buy a barrel that has a pump on top of it. That's getting into pretty severe amount of grease usage, but if you've just got a little tractor, a little excavator, this will get you going and take care of that machine. All right, we lost a little bit of the audio in the last clip, so I'm out here to reshoot it. So when you're greasing, as soon as you feel that change where it's not pumping grease anymore, it'll get easier, or it just feels squishy, stop immediately, because what you're doing is you're sucking air up here, and it's going to make it harder to prime this back up. Not the end of the world, but if you feel it, stop and put a new tube in it. So what we're going to do, we're going to back this thing off a couple of turns. They're threaded in there quite a ways, but what we're doing is we're breaking that vacuum that a lot of guys really struggle to pull these out. They're not hard to pull out. It's that vacuum right here that you're pulling against. So from there, we'll take this tube. You can pull it out with your hand, but there's a razor sharp little edge in there. So best way to do this is just to come over here, and we'll just shoot that into the garbage can. Give it a little shake, and we're all set. So now some of these will have this where you got to push that with your finger. I think maybe once upon a time there was a spring to it, maybe not. Whereas this is a Lincoln. You pull that off to the side, and you can see that little notch there. So what we're going to do, we're going to put a new tube in here. So pop this cap off. Some of them will have a plastic thing on there, but some of them don't. Grab this cap, and if you're out there in the cold and wearing gloves, that pops that right out. Pull this little foil guy out of here. Stick him right in there. Now that can go in the garbage, and it's not going to somehow get onto you. Drop that tube in, and if it doesn't go all the way in, just give it a little twist. And that is aligning with the rubber plunger that's down in here. So from there, all we got to do, stick this on here, start threading. As soon as you feel that you've got a couple of threads, we'll come back over here, and come on, there it goes. So now that snubber is inside the tube of grease now, and that's pushing. So what we're going to do from there, we're not going to thread this all the way in yet. We're not going to push this all the way in yet. I'll push that down a little bit. This is the purger. We'll just push that in a little bit. That might let some air out. And we've got grease. Now if we don't have grease, we'll turn that in farther and keep pumping and keep inching this in. And between the two of those, that's gonna work that grease through there, get all the air out of here, and you're gonna be primed up and ready to go. So nothing tricky here. If you're really struggling and you can't get the gun to take grease, maybe you forgot this foil piece. That'll absolutely not work. Got to get that out of there. And between this and just pumping it, it should prime right up. If not, pull this guy back off. You're going to want to pull this out and lock it. Pull this guy back off, take some grease out of there, and stuff it right up into the inside of here, where you'll see a couple little holes in there. Those are the suction side of that pump, and that's going to bring that grease right to the pump, and it'll take off. So let's give this thing a try. All right, guys, I happen to have a log splitter in here, so we'll give this guy a little shot, see what we get. And that, I gotta hold that on there. This grease tip's kind of junky, and that's another reason I prefer the pistol grip. All right, so this is kind of the couple of basic grease guns. These are cheap. Get them at just about anywhere, Tractor Supply or the parts house, garage sale, you name it. You got your pistol grip, you got your lever, and they all work pretty much the same way, and they all work well. You'll find a preference after you've done a little bit. You can buy, this is just this whip hose, and it's got little pipe threads on both ends, and you can replace just that. So if your hose gets a hole in it, you don't have to throw your grease gun away. You can also buy a lot of different styles of these. Pick out something that works for you and go with it. I tend to keep one of these, one of the lock and lubes. I keep a whip around, and it's just quick and easy. Fix it when it breaks and back to work. If you've got a Coyote, you almost have to have a lock and lube on your tip. I don't know another way to do it better and easier, but works out really good. They've got these deep recessed grease zerks, which is great for not breaking them off. But what'll happen, put your grease gun on there, and you have a heck of a time getting it off. So anyways, you just got to put a little grease in there till you see a little coming out. When you get used to your machine, you might find you need 3 pumps for every hole, 5 pumps for every hole. Doesn't matter as long as you're seeing a little bit of grease push out. And you'll also learn where the grease pops out on certain fittings. You know, sometimes it comes out the bottom, sometimes it comes out the side, and so you might be watching the wrong spot waiting for it to come out on some of my excavators. If you're not paying attention, you'll get a whole bunch of grease all over the place. So I personally grease this thing possibly more than I need to, but it's an expensive machine, and the best way to wear one out prematurely is to not grease it properly. So it doesn't take but a minute, doesn't cost very much, and makes everything work a little better. All right, just stick this guy on there. It locks in. I don't have to hold that or anything. And so now I'm just going to pump some grease in here, and you'll see it coming out everywhere. You don't have to go any farther than that. It's coming out all around here. It's coming out all around here. So I know it's going all the way through this thing. So you can see that, and I'll give it a couple more pumps so you guys can see where all it's coming out of. And you just squeeze that guy and it pops right off onto the next pin. All right, another topic here. These gloves are great. If you don't want to get grease all over you, grab these. You'll save what I just did and all the mess. The other thing, you got these hand towels. These suckers are great. It's got hand cleaner in it. It's got a towel in it. You can rinse off with water. Different brands. Everybody seems to make some of these, but they take this stuff right off your hands. So make you a little spot where you got a grease gun, you got your grease. If you want gloves, get gloves. Consider these. They're great for everything. You get stuff on your hands, you can wipe off, and you know, it's pretty inevitable if you get a bunch of grease on your hands, the cell phone's gonna ring, and it's gonna be, you know, time to grab something. You don't want to get grease all over. So yeah, these are great. You know, I keep these in the truck. I keep them in the service truck. I keep them around here. You don't always have time to run off and actually wash your hands, so these are great little quick cleanup, especially if you're out on the road or out in the field. When you do make a mess, they're pretty good for wiping down tools. You get a lot of that crud off of there. Some guys wipe their stuff down with brake clean. I just really don't like that stuff on my hands. It really dries you out, cracks you. Who knows what health concerns there'll be with that down the road. So give your stuff a quick wipe. You can wipe off your tip and everything else if you don't like the diesel. But yeah, give that a try. They actually smell like oranges instead of grease, so kind of nice. So this is a fairly universal grease gun mount. I think everybody makes their own flavor of these. This one's probably a Napa one. You got some screw holes. You can mount this anywhere on your machine. If you got a fender, or you got somewhere that's not a roll bar or a loader arm, you can just mount that sucker in there. And what am I doing wrong here? All right, this is a little bit tricky to do with it not actually being screwed down to something. Very easy to do when it's mounted, but that mounts your grease gun. That's not going to fall off. It's always there when you need it. So if you've got a spot in a toolbox or somewhere, you can mount this thing. You can mount it on a pole in your pole barn. You can mount it on the wall. You can mount it out in the shed somewhere. You know, a common place where you're going to need that thing. You just snap that off, and there's your grease gun. Another thing I'll mention is when it's cold out, this stuff gets really sticky, and it's hard to load in the grease gun and get them primed. Two, it's difficult to pump into the machine. So if you've got a warm place, you can keep this. You know, if your shop's got a warm spot in it, some machines like excavators, they've got a spot that the engine compartment kind of blasts a little bit of heat out of. You know, maybe throw it on the dashboard of your pickup and get this stuff not super hot, but room temperature. It works a whole lot better, and that's going to make everything about this a whole lot easier. Alright guys, I'm sure I'm leaving something out, but I'm hoping that this is going to help some guys know how to grease their machine, save them a lot of headaches. These grease guns can be really frustrating if you don't understand how to purge them, or if you just don't understand greasing your machine. You know, it's going to cause some damage to it. I would highly recommend going with a good grease, and especially the small machines. They don't use much of this. This stuff isn't super cheap, but at the cost of pins and bushings and what have you, it's going to pay off in the long run. So, you know, 10-20 years down the road, you've still got a machine instead of your machine needs a full rebuild. So I hope you guys liked the video. If you like more of these videos, lots of topics we could discuss. If it's entertaining, if it's educational, consider subscribing, and please hit that like button. Thank you.